And we are on and running. So I am going to, bear with me for just a moment, pull up the contract on here. Wonderful. Do you have the residential contract in front of you by chance? Okay. Well, then in that case, I'm going to pull it up for us so that you can view it while we go through it here. Let's see, listing contract. And now I'm going to close this window because we're getting there. So if you guys have any comments, I'll check in every now and then, or you can unmute yourself. I left it so everyone has access to talk to me as we go along because it's better to answer questions verbally sometimes than it is when typing, I see, because since we're recording this. Okay, so the listing contract, California listing contract. As you can see here, exclusive right, this is where you would put the seller's information. Take that out. If you were filling it out, let's put my name. I'm going to buy a house today. Or sell my house, I guess you would say. This is where you would put the seller, and here is the broker. So in our case, the broker for this example is going to be ERS Elk Grove. The beginning date. The beginning date is the date that you are going to list the property, not the date that necessarily is going to be the day that you sign the contract. So maybe today is Friday, but you want to wait until next Thursday because of the weekend. Then this is where you put the date it's going to go on the market. So I'm going to put today. And then this is the ending date for the listing contract. So typically I'd go 6 months out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then usually I pick the 30th day. A year is pretty long, and 6 months is reasonable for you to go in contract with someone to sell their home, in my opinion. So if you read this, the real property, let's see. So this is the city that the property is going to be in. So let's say Elk Grove. And the county. In our case, it's going to be Sacramento. The appraisal number, if you don't know where to find this, you can go to Prospector. Let's see. I'm going to open a property up. Now what you can do, I'm just going to open this up. If you ever need to take a peek at the tax record, this is where you're going to open up that tax record. So in this case, we're going to use this as the APN number. And where did my form go? Here we go. And you plug it in. There you go. So let's talk a little bit about your listing contract when you're sitting with your clients. One of the things that when you're going through this contract, I'm looking for my highlighter. Right here, items excluded and included in the property. I usually, almost always, there we go, back to pointer. If the client is going to take anything from the chandelier in the living room because it's gorgeous to curtains if they're hanging, or even the curtain rod, you're going to want them to put them here if they're excluded from the sale. right here in this little box right here where it says additional items excluded. So let's read it. Unless otherwise specified in real estate purchase contract, all fixtures and fittings that are attached to the property are included, and personal property items are excluded from the purchase price. Now, again, back to those items. So that could be your curtain rod. It can also be a plant that is in the backyard or a tree in the backyard. So you definitely want to ask your clients verbally if they are going to take any items that are attached to the property or the foundation of the residence. If so, you're going to mark it here. If not, put NA in writing, because you're probably not going to have your computer with you, and then right next to it have them or whoever's selling the home initial it right there, because just a quick story, we're already into stories. Once upon a time I was in a short sale. This short sale lasted several months. Once we were about to close, actually it lasted about a year and a half. When we were finally ready to close, the buyer's agent went to do the final inspection and found the hood of the stove and a few other items were taken from the property. Had I not had the client initial here, I may have been in litigation. The first response from the client was, I did not know, and you did not tell me I could not take those items. So I pulled out my little contract and showed her where her and her husband initialed, and we went over this. So it saved me. So I say, have them initial. Don't just assume because you put nothing there that it is okay. Make sure you initial, even though they're going to initial the bottom and the other side, because they could always say they never read the little print and you just had them sign it. On the bottom, additional items included in the sale. If there's anything that's included, same thing. Have them write it and have them initial next to it, just to make sure that their initials are there. So we're going to scroll down in the property price, $350. So if you're handwriting a contract, just make sure that you write it in words and then also put the numerical number here. Additional items would be here if there's anything in addition to the listing price. Now we're going to scroll down. Forgive me, I am wearing my glasses for the first time, so I may be off a little bit here. Compensation to broker. Notice, the amount or rate of real estate compensation or commission is not fixed by law. What does that mean? That means that the broker's compensation, commission, is negotiable. Now, if they start to negotiate, your typical listing contract should start at 6%. Our standard, 5%. Anything below 5% needs to be cleared with the broker/office manager. So I know some of you are not here locally with the Elk Grove office on this call right now, so you would want to clear anything below 5% with your office manager. And then you would input that commission. So in this case, we will put 6%. Seller agrees to pay to broker as compensation for services, irrespective of agency relationship, either 6% of the listing price, or if a purchase agreement is entered into, of the purchase price. And then so if you're not going to do a dollar figure and you have gotten clearance that you're going to do just a flat amount, you're going to put it here and you're going to want to make sure you mark this box. Again, there's a box next to it and you're going to want to mark it. Same thing up here. I missed it, but I'm going to mark that box to let them know that this is the compensation. I didn't erase that line. Sorry, give me a second. I don't know if I can now. Let's see if I can erase it. No, it won't allow me to. Okay, I'll never use that again. So where were we? Compensation. Okay. Number 2, if within this area here is to protect yourself. So a lot of us do open houses. We do a lot of marketing. We call our past clients. We call other listing agents to see if they have buyers and so forth. This is to protect ourselves. If we go into contract and decide to let the client out of their contract, I just do 30 days, but you can put 90 days, you can put 100 and something days in there, but this is to protect you. If within 30 calendar days after the end of the listing period or any extensions after any cancellations of this agreement, unless otherwise agreed, seller enters into a contract to sell, convey, lease, or otherwise transfer the property to anyone, prospective buyer of that person's related entity, and then I'm just going to summarize the rest, that has come from the fruits of your labor. Meaning, if you know that you canceled this agreement, however, somehow behind your back, a client, prospective buyer had reached or got in touch with the seller and came to an agreement but excluded you, this would protect you. So those things like open house logs, make sure people sign in, names and so forth. One of the ways to find out if you're just curious is after the sale of the home, you can always go to the tax record and put it together with your log and see if anything came from your fruits of your labor, if your client all of a sudden wants to cancel and move forward without you. So this would protect you here. Let's see. If within broker's prior written consent, the property is withdrawn from sale, conveyed, leased, rented, otherwise transferred, or made unmarketable by a voluntarily act of the seller during the listing period or any extension. So that goes back to the top. Sorry, my glasses. Where am I? So we're going to... sorry, guys. I need to adjust my eyes. So we did this one. So where am I? The buyer's written consent and so forth. Okay, so we're going to scroll down because I lost my place to D. Seller has been advised of broker's policy regarding cooperation with and the amount of compensation offered to other brokers. Broker is authorized to compensate with and compensate broker participating through the multi-listing services, MLS, by offering the MLS broker out of broker's compensation specified in 4A. Either, and this is where so a lot of people I notice when I get these listing agreements, they forget this spot. This is important because this is what you are going to send along with the purchase contract to the escrow officer, your title person, so that they know what to pay the other agent. So if you're getting 6%, the standard is 2.5% to the seller's agent, but you can split that in half, 3%. So for instance, if you have a team and let's say you're co-listing this with someone, you may not necessarily give them the whole 6%. You may give them 3%. But this is where you will put that number because this is your agreement with the seller of what you are going to give the other agent. Now, I'm going to stop here really fast because if terms here change, which I've seen before, and your commission is reduced to, let's say something happened hypothetically and it did get reduced to 5%, or in this scenario, let's say 4%. Now, it may not necessarily be fair. let's say before you get in contract with the other agent, I apologize. So let's say you're not able to sell the home and you took this from 6% and you decided to reduce your commission. If you reduce your commission, you need to do a modification of terms. Anything that is changed in this contract or in any contract needs to be changed with a modification of terms. So in your forms, and I stop here because this happens a lot when I ask the agent, where is the modification of terms agreement changing your commission split or other terms? Right here, modification of terms, addendum 2 authorize and right to sell. So you would do a listing, fill all the items above, and then you would, if you're going to extend your contract, you can do that here and add, maybe your listing contract expires October 23rd, so you can go here and change that date to December 31st. If it's the dollar amount because you're reducing your listing, you need a modification of terms before you change it on the MLS. I'm going to repeat that. You need a modification of terms before changing the amount on the MLS. And then here you can change the compensation to state that your commission has now been reduced. So you would do something like 5% commission paid to the broker, 2.5% to selling agent. And you would put that here so it's all in writing. Everyone's clear, and then you change on the MLS. Any questions? I didn't ask for any questions today. Let's see. Oh, voice is cutting out. Giorgio, can you hear me now? Hopefully. Carrie, are you hearing me okay? Okay. Giorgio, I wonder if it's your phone. So hopefully you can hear me pretty good. If not, text me if I need to speak up. So here we go. So we're back here. So that's with regards to commission, modification of terms. I'm going back to the contract where we were talking about the compensation to the selling agent and then yourself. So you're going to put the selling agent's percentage here and your percentage here. If it is not going to be 3% and it's a flat fee for some reason, you're just going to come down here and you're going to mark and put that in there. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Lynn. I'm glad you've been able to join us. Okay, so now broker is authorized to cooperate with with and compensate brokers operating outside the MLS as per broker's policy. So with that to say, you can compensate someone who's not a part of the MLS. So, but we recommend that the person on the other end is with the MLS. Number 4F. So seller represents that seller has not previously, this is another important one. Seller represents that seller has not previously entered into a listing agreement with another broker regarding the property unless specified above. So, not above, but as follows. So before you go to a listing agreement, I recommend that you go online, you Google it or put it into Zillow and see if any listings come up. And in addition to that, go on to MetroList, enter the address as a search, and make sure the property does not come up as already listed. Sometimes, and I've run into this in the past, someone has it on the market as a for sale by owner, and you need them to remove that so that you can sell it because you're going to need to specify that here. Or sometimes you may have to wait until another listing agent is aware that their seller is now changing brokerages. So we cannot list both homes at the same time. we can't list at the same time as another broker, another company. So just make sure you do that so you don't waste your time on preparing for a listing agreement, or so that you're prepared to ask that question and let them know that you found them online and discuss that with the client. Let's see. Seller warrants that the seller has no obligation to pay compensation to any other brokers regarding the property unless the property is transferred to any of the following individuals or entities. Okay, any questions? Okay, so we're going to move on. Multiple listing services. We are a part of, and I say we in this office are a part of the Sacramento Association of, I'm sorry, not the association, but we are Sacramento Association of Realtors, but we are a part of the Sacramento Multiple Listing Services. So that's the Sacramento MLS. Some of you in other areas are part of Placerville. So it's, what is it, Placer County. Some in the Bay Area, you guys have a different MLS provider. So we all are tied in together where we can see each other's listings, but we're not part of the same multiple listing service. And I say that because unless, and I'm going to keep reading, so I'm going to start over. Broker is a participant subscriber to Sacramento, and that's going to be your local list MLS, multiple listing service, and possibly others. So some of us may be in more than one. Unless otherwise instructed in writing, the property will be listed with the MLS specified above. Now that's important, because if you are here in Sacramento, but you are listing the property in the Bay Area, yes, Sacramento agents can see that listing. But I'm sorry, Bay Area agents can see that listing. However, it's not on their local multiple service listing service, so it may not come up. It may not be as visible. And I will show you why I say that. I think it's better to show as an explanation. So if I am on MetroList, your home page, and I look up a property, I'm going to do a property search in, let's see, a standard, residential standard, and we're going to do a Bay Area listing search. So these are our local areas. Contra Costa, say Antioch. And we'll do 2 bedrooms. When I do the search, I should only get a few properties that may come up, so 7. However, if I go to Quattro, because they're part of another one, I believe, it may just be the Bay Area, not necessarily Antioch. I would do a search here and I may get multiple properties, more properties. So they're a part of a different association. If you list in that area, I think I'm wasting a little too much time there, but if you're listing in another outside area, you're going to want to call their local MLS and find out how to be a part of it so that your client can get more visual advertising on their local MLS is what I'm getting at with that. So with that to say, if it's not, then you continue to read. That MLS is, or if checked, is not the primary MLS for the geographic area of the property. So if it's not locally, you're going to want them to check this box, acknowledging that they may not get as much visual presence as they may expect any other time. So again, this box right here is only if you're doing a listing outside of your primarily or your area. Okay, so benefits of using the MLS impact of opting out of the MLS presenting all offers. So this section here, what is the MLS? It describes a little bit to your client what the MLS is and what the benefits are. Exposure exposure to buyers through MLS. Listing properties with the MLS exposes a seller's property to all real estate agents and brokers and their potential buyer clients who are participants or subscribers to the MLS or a what is that word? Reciprocaling MLS. Sorry, guys. Close private listing clubs or groups. This one here is a little bit different. I guess out there, and I've never come across it, there are closed private listing clubs and groups. It's different than the MLS, and this little area here just describes how going with that avenue versus the MLS is not as beneficial or may not be. Not listing properties in the local MLS. This just describes a little bit of why. Opting out of the MLS, again, it goes back to the benefits and so forth. This one here, highlight it if you have to. I usually highlight it for them and I talk to them a little bit about this. Some of us have sat down with our sellers with lowball offers and they get offended. So prepare them ahead of time. Let them know that so I'll read it. Sellers understand that brokers must present all offers received to sellers understand that broker must present all offers received for seller's property unless seller gives broker written instructions to the contrary. So that's self-explanatory. However, reiterate it to them that if you get a lowball offer, you understand, but you need to get them a copy of every offer that comes over unless instructed. And if it's instructed that you don't, then again, you want to get that in writing. Maybe there's a dollar figure they don't want to see under. So if your client is selling the home for $350 and they don't want to see anything under $325, put it in writing. That way you have something, that way you don't have to waste everyone's time and you can negotiate on their behalf. Let's see here. We're going to scroll down. Seller's representation. Seller's representation represents that unless otherwise specified in writing, seller is unaware of any notices of default recorded against the property. Now, I just came up against this recently. This is really important. Have them initial this, but have a discussion with them. I mean, you don't have to have them initial it if you don't want to, but for instance, I'm in the middle of a contract and I'm 20-something odd days into it. Docs are ready to go to title, and about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I called escrow and asked them to get a commission demands from the lenders, and everything seemed to be fine. However, on Monday of this week, I got a notice from escrow telling me that there are default judgments against one of the primary owners. And these judgments that are against the home are collectively together, they are about $20,000 that need to be paid out before the property can be sold or from the property proceeds. Well, that would be wonderful, fine and dandy, but there's only $1,700 going to the seller at the end of the transaction. So that would be a little bit impossible to pay these default judgments. So to my surprise, I give the client a call and I let them know, hey, we had this discussion and these items popped up. Well, in this case, the gentleman says to me that he was unaware of these items being or affecting their property, and he didn't think it was going to affect the property. So I say that because these are the items you want to talk to your client about. When you hit this area, you want to ask them, are there any water bills that you have not paid in the past that may be a lien on the property? Are there any child support lien, or do you pay child support? And if so, are you caught up? Because if they are not caught up with child support, it will need to come from the proceeds of the sale. Have you ever had a DUI? And are you current on any payments you may owe with regards to your DUI? Bankruptcy, are you in bankruptcy? So any of those questions or any questions you can think of that may have a loan, ask them specifically, because certain things like child support, they don't necessarily think that that's going to affect their home for some reason, but it does. If you are in arrears with child support, you cannot move forward with the sale of your home unless you have proceeds to come from the sale to pay yourself current. So I hope everyone understood that, and I hope that saves you from the transaction. And if you come across something like that at the end of the transaction, please call your office manager so that they can help you through it, because there are ways around it, but you just don't want to come upon it. Okay, where are we next? Broker and seller's duty. Broker agrees to exercise reasonable efforts to do diligence and achieve the my phone's going off like crazy over here. Broker agrees to exercise reasonable efforts and due diligence to achieve the purpose of disclosures as necessary. Advertise and market the property by any means and in any medium selected by broker, including MLS and the internet, and to the extent permitted by these media controls and disseminations of the information submitted to any medium and disclosed to any real estate license making an inquiry, the receipt of any offer on the property and the offering price of such offers. Seller agrees to consider offers presented by broker. Now remember, we talked about the only offers you don't have to submit is if you have it in writing. And to act in good faith to accomplish the sale of the property by, among other things, making the property available for showing at reasonable times and subject to paragraph 4F. Does anyone remember what 4F was? 4F was: seller represents that the seller has not previously entered into, an agreement with any other broker, the property, unless specified as follows. So if there's anything there that may affect that paragraph. Where am I? Referring to broker all inquiries of any property interest in the property. Seller is responsible for determining at what price to list and sell the property. So I'd like to talk about that for a second. It's not our job to tell them what to list their property for. It's our job to do our due diligence to give them the information to come to a conclusion. So just because market value is $350,000, that does not necessarily mean that your client is going to want to list their home for $350,000. So what happens in that case? That is up to your office manager and your broker. They may allow you to list properties, over market value. Maybe if their office is short of listings and they're looking for the advertising, but I do not recommend it. And I recommend that you give your clients the information and let them come to a reasonable decision about what the sale price is. If they look to you to ask you for your advice, it's one thing, but you need to let them know that it is their decision to come up with the sale price. I hope that helps. Deposit. Broker is authorized to accept and hold on seller's behalf any deposits to be applied towards the purchase price. No, we do not. This was the past, when brokers would take the EMD deposit and hold it until the escrow company would come and pick it up. Check with your local or with your office branch and find out if they still do that. But most branches do not do that anymore for a few reasons. Some of the agents out there in the world did not return those checks if they were never picked up from title. So we've had, not us personally, but out there in the world, there have been lost checks. What is it called? Just litigation with regards to brokers not handling those checks correctly. So the DRE, or I should say BRE, is against the agents taking EMD checks. So you can always call your escrow company and ask them to pick up the escrow check directly from the client. So they will send a carrier to your client to pick it up, or have your client drop it off at escrow. No different than if you had them come pick it up from the office. They can go over there, or your client can wire those funds. Agency relationship disclosure. If the property includes residential property for 1 to 4 dwelling units, seller shall receive a disclosure regarding agency relationship prior to entering into this agreement. I hope you all know what that disclosure is. If not, you can find it again in here. I'm going to pull it up for you. Oop. Did it not? I don't know why it's not coming up. Let's see, it's under D. It's disclosure relationship. And it looks a little something, if I can open it, here we go, like this. So with every listing contract, you're going to have one of these documents signed by your client and yourself, and you're going to go over this with them as well. Okay. So far, does anyone have any questions? Okay. We're going to move on. So we are number 9, right? And no, I'm going to go here. Sorry, now I just got actually printed one out, and I'm reading from the one on my desk. It's a little easier for me. So, like I said, I'm working with some new glasses here. So let's see. Seller understands. I'm going to read it out loud. Seller understands and agrees that broker, without the prior written consent of seller, will not disclose to buyer that, this is just in case. That's what I'm sorry, I'm going to back up here. C, possible dual agency with buyer. Depending upon the circumstance, it may be necessary or appropriate for broker to act as an agent for both seller and buyer, exchange party, or one or more additional parties, buyer. Broker shall, as soon as, where am I, right? Predictable, disclose to the seller any election to act as a dual agent representing both seller and buyer. So what does that mean? That means if both of you guys, if you're representing both, in addition to that, you need to disclose it. That's what this paragraph is going to talk about. And if that's the case, you're going to need another disclosure, and that's the dual agency disclosure. So you're going to come over here on WIN forms, you're going to pick it out, and it's going to disclose that you are representing both parties and that they both agree to it. And if that weren't the case, just know that you are in here explaining to the seller, and I'm going to read it now down at the bottom. Seller understands and agrees that broker, without the prior written consent of seller, will not disclose to buyer that seller is willing to sell the property at a price less than the listing price. So in other words, you have a fiduciary responsibility to both now. So you can't enlist a buyer by saying, you know what? I have inside information that the seller is willing to come down in price if you use me. Or anything of that matter. Or maybe you're in the process of negotiating and you say, well, he had told me that he may remove that wall if you're interested in that, and that will bring more value. So you can't give insider information, basically, is what you're saying, and you won't. Security and insurance. Broker is not responsible for loss or damage to personal or real property or person, whether attributed to use of the key safe lockbox, a showing of the property, or otherwise. Third parties include, but not limited to, appraisers, inspectors, brokers, and prospective buyers may have access to and take videos and photographs of the interior of the property. Seller agrees to take responsibility to safeguard and protect valuables. So this one here, just reiterate, I highlight a lot of my contracts when I'm sitting with the clients. Just let them know to have insurance on the property just in case you do an open house. Make sure they put all their valuables away, and just to always be aware, never open the door. You want to let your clients know, never open the door to strangers. If you're not there doing an open house and someone knocks on the door that they don't know, and there's a sign in the yard, and that person happens to say they're an agent, do not open the door. Through the door, you can tell them to leave the card on the door, and you'll tell your agent. But just safety is first. Never open the door to strangers. We tell our kids that. We have to tell our clients that as well. This paragraph here talks about the marketing that we do. I wanted to touch on some other stuff, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through this now. Photographs and internet advertising. So if they decide not to have you photograph the home, you're going to want to check this box here. So if they don't want images of their home, right, seller instructs board, on the MLS, then they're going to check this box here. Now for things like this, you're going to go to MetroList, and because there's another special document that you're going to need in that case. And where you'll find it is right here under Forms. And how did I get there, right? Sorry, I think I closed Prospector. Let's go back in again. Continue. I hope, here we go. So under links, you'll find Information Center and Forms and Documents. If you click that, it's going to take you here. From here, you go to Forms, and then you can go down, and here's an MLS waiver, which I have open here, and you can read through it for them, which talks about, you need this for you can use this for a few things. This waiver is to take them, or so that they don't have to put their property on the MLS, or maybe even the photos on the MLS. This is also the waiver if you are going to take the listing, however, they ask you to hold the listing and not put it on right away. This is going to be that waiver that you're going to submit to MetroList services so that you don't get fined, because you have not 3 days, but 2 days to submit that to MetroList. Let me see. I don't think we've gotten there yet. It's down here, I believe. Oh no, that's the broker. But you have 2 days to get your listing up on MetroList once you have your listing. So you definitely want to make sure you have a waiver. If not, put on there on time for auditing purposes, as well as them finding out somehow. And it does happen, believe me. So we're going to scroll down now, right? Or here. So key safe lockbox. If they want a lockbox on the home, then everything is fine and dandy. You're going to want to read this portion to them, no different than everything else. And if they don't, they're going to check this box right here. And then you don't put a lockbox on there. You're going to want to make them, what was I going to say? I forgot. So this is for the lockbox. Just letting them know a key safe lockbox is designed to hold a key to the property to permit access to the property by broker, cooperating brokers, MLS participants, etc. So if they don't do that, what does that mean? That means if they don't have a lockbox, that means limited access to the property. And if they have limited access to the property, which may result into less offers. And you can explain it to them that way. But if they don't want one, you can click that box there. Everyone thinks when they go get a listing that the broker is excited and will take any listing. They are excited. They're grateful for you getting the listing and they hope you close it. However, it is not your listing. It is the broker's listing. So the office has the right to, I missed the whole section, sorry, I'm down here, has 5 days, and this will tell your client that if you are not the broker of the office, the broker and the office manager has the right to review the listing agreement and cancel the listing agreement within 5 days. And that is one of the reasons why it is mandatory for the ERS Elk Grove office to have their listings paperwork in the office within 3 business days of taking the listing so that we can review it and make sure everything is kosher before it goes on the MLS and everyone is in the middle of the contract. Again, it is required that 3 days after taking the listing, you need to submit your listing contract to the office for review. And then the broker, or actually in this case for Elk Grove, the manager will sign it and then it would be executed. If the manager does not sign your listing agreement, just as an FYI to everyone who does not submit their listing agreements to the broker / office managers, then the contract is null and void. So if it does not have the initials from the authorized parties to sign it, then it's not a valid contract because, again, you are not the broker of record. You're a real estate associate. Up here we missed this. I apologize. Signage. It is not required for the seller to put a sign in their yard. It is requested from us. So if that client, prospective seller, does not want a sign, they can check this box here and we won't put a sign in the yard. But of course we do recommend it. Okay, so equal housing opportunity. The property is offered in compliance with federal, state, and local anti-discrimination law. Read that to them, let them know, and I'm sure all will be well. Attorney fees. In any action, proceeding, or arbitration between seller and broker regarding the obligation to pay compensation under this agreement. Okay, so this right here is going to be part of this down here. So we're going to skip down here. You're going to want to go over this with your clients just to let them know that when signing this agreement and initialing these boxes here, did I miss one? No, there's going to be 2. It's on the second page. Signing or initialing this box, and I think that's on, so just this one. That's the purchase contract. Sorry, I got confused there. When they initial this box, they are agreeing to mediation first, then arbitration. Mediation is basically a discussion trying to come to a mutual agreement with each other. Arbitration is when you have a retired judge or justice, retired judge or justice, or an attorney with 5 years of residential real estate law experience who will then look over the case and come to an agreement with you to settle the issue. So that's that part there. If you scroll down, entire agreement. All prior agreements verbally. So if you've negotiated with your client verbally before putting it in writing and it is not on this contract, it is null and void once this contract is signed by all parties. And when I say all parties, again, that is the agent, the sellers, and then also the broker's initials as well. And that will be that part there. For number 21, ownership, title, and authority. This here, you always want to check your tax record to make sure that all parties are on the contract that need to sell this home. So if you have a husband and wife and the wife says, I'm on title, but I'm not on the loan, does that mean she goes on the contract? Yes. She is on title, therefore she has to sign off and agree to the sale of the property. So even though she is not on the loan, she is a party to this contract. So check the tax record and also ask to make sure if there is anybody else who may have an interest in the property that needs to sign this to go into contract with you and agree to this contract. And then that will be that. Seller's advisory. This one here is just about disclosures. So I'm going to tell you on your own time because it's already 6 o'clock to go through this. The TDS, yes, we need to have a TDS. We need to have an NHD, and there are some more. If there's a death in the property, you definitely want them to disclose that, and you can read this little provision here for them. If you hear about a death of the property, but let me rephrase that. If you know that a death has happened in the property from things that you have seen, like the news, or maybe the seller disclosed it to you, then you need to disclose as well. If you don't know, then you can't disclose. So you don't use your assumption. Make sure if there's a leak, and you think there's a leak, don't disclose a leak unless you know there's a leak because you checked underneath the cabinets. So you disclose anything you see, and that is going to be on the advid. We are not, what is the advid? Here we go. And everyone needs an advid. If you are selling a property or you are the agent on a purchase, you are required to fill out an advid. And I get this every time. I didn't know I was supposed to fill this out. This is a agent visual inspection. And does that mean that you turn on the water and you let the water run for 5 minutes to see if there's any leaks? No, it is a visual inspection. You are not a home inspector, and you're just going to put what you see. If there's nicks and cracks, you write it in here. If the carpet is lifted, you write it in here. Anything else, you're going to put it in here that you observed. Let's see, back to listing contract. Oh, TDS. So in here, one of the disclosures that is required is the TDS. And we'll go through these contracts on another day, but just in case before then, in the section on the TDS, right here, if you notice, you will click that you are going to provide a TDS, and I just recommend here you're going to want to say seller's agent and listing agent are not professional home inspectors. If you're the selling agent or listing agent, you would put that and say listing agent recommends that buyer performs a home inspection by a professional licensed home inspector. That will go here in your advid and you're covered. Because again, we are not home inspectors. So we have now the listing agreement and the seller's advisory, so go through that. And here's some more disclosures. Those disclosures, if you haven't already seen it before, this is your checklist of disclosures you're going to need in order to get paid and to be compliant with your file. If you do not have a copy of this, I will provide one to you, and there will also be a place, a Google Drive that everyone will have access to where you can pick up these items. And the reason why I say that, some of the disclosures are not necessary, some of these disclosures are not necessarily needed if your home is prior 1978, then you will need a lead-based paint. If it is not, you don't need a lead-based paint, and so forth. So you definitely want to have this list of disclosures, as well as what reports are required, and that will cover that. So back to listing. So when you take a listing, you need a listing agreement. You need an agency disclosure. This is what you would take to your client. You also are going to need a property profile. So I told you how to get here. So under Forms and Documents, you will go to Listing Profile Sheet. And if you see Profile Sheet, Attached Documents, Listing Change Forms, you want the profile sheet. You can print it, or you can start it before you go there to make it easier for you. Your office ID, so anything that is in red is required. So your office ID in red is going to be, you can find that on Metro List. So if you find yourself, go to Agent, let me go find myself. Oop, I don't exist. First name, last name, agent search. There I go. So to find your office ID right here, down below, office ID. So I would take that and go back over to the form. I'm gonna close these now. Uh-oh. No. There we go. I just know. RTO. I'm just going to put it. So agent ID, same thing. You're going to grab that from here, and you're going to go on top, and you're going to find your agent ID. A lot of time, you're going to want to memorize this because there's a lot of different places. As a real estate agent, you're going to need this. When you're marketing or filling out paperwork, they're going to ask you for your Metro List office ID. If you're doing conversion and you haven't filled your paperwork out yet, this is what they mean by your Metro List ID. It's going to be your agent ID right here, and this is your office ID. So you put that there. Status, is it active? Yes, you're going to do an active listing. Service level, is it limited, restricted? Usually it's going to be none of the above. Address, you're going to enter here. City here. Zip code. I'm going to go through this a little briefly with you because there are some things where you may not know where to find it. This is self-explanatory, part of the address. Cross street. Pull up Google Maps, find out what the cross street is. And besides, you have to get there, right? So zoning. Where would you find zoning? That's going to be on your tax record. I thought we opened it up already, but let's go open one up. Let's see. So your tax record is going to be your best friend when it comes to filling in your property profile. So with your tax record, you can go down and look for your zoning, RD7. So I would just fill that in under RD7. Approximate square feet, tax record, you're going to look for approximate square feet. So lot square footage is 7,058 square feet. Gross area, building square feet, and that's what you're going to need, is this one right here, building square feet. I picked the wrong property. Laguna Park Drive, Elk Grove. Maybe not, but this one's 2,000 square feet. So you're going to utilize that and stick that in there. So that's the second floor and the first floor together equates to 2,000 square feet. So there it is there, square footage. Approximate square foot source. If you take it from your tax record, then it's assessor autofill. Let's see, then you're going to go over down, variable price. So this is going to be no, because you're doing a set price for your listing agreement. And then you put your listing price. What county? How do you find your county? You're going to go back to MetroList and you can actually do a search. If you don't know, for Sacramento, it's SA, Sacramento County. These are the county codes right here. So see Sacramento, SA. If it's in Placer, it's PL, San Juan, SJ. So that would be your county code. Assessor parcel number, we already know where to get that, right? From your tax record or from the MLS. Tax record is right there. So if you get the gist of it, that's basically what you're going to do all the way down here is pull the information from the tax record. Bedrooms, builder, you're most likely going to have to do a search online for the builder because that's not on the tax record 90% of the time. Elementary school, you're going to want to go back to a search, scroll down and find the words school districts, and then you can actually, if you put one in, go and search what the code for the school is going to be. So if it's in Sacramento, here are the Sacramento school districts or zones, I guess you would say. And then down here, same thing, property subtype. Usually it's one house on lot. If you have two houses on lot, you're going to pick that one. Subtype description. Attached means that it is attached to another property. Detached is what your homes normally are going to be unless it's a townhome or something of that matter. So if you have any questions with regards to the type of home, feel free to text me and I'll answer the question or help you figure it out. Construction, same thing, foundation. A slab means that there is no access underneath. Raised means that there is access underneath. Be aware when you go look at your home, your listing, that in some cases the front of the home is a slab parcel, but if you have sometimes the back of the property, or maybe vice versa, the back of the property may be raised. And if you don't catch that right away and the home inspector goes out there, you could be charged an additional fee. And the last thing you want is for your buyer to, or for you to note on the MLS, even if you're the listing agent, that it's a slab foundation. And then if you're the buyer's agent or the buyer agent looks only on the MLS to confirm, before sending the contractor out, you don't want to be the one that has to eat that cost. So just be aware when you go out there if it's a slab foundation or raised or maybe both. Exterior, take a look at the exterior, make sure you know what it is, mark the boxes. I'm looking to see one that you may not know. Laundry usually has a 220, so check your laundry room to see. Fireplace you'll put here. Ask one of the very important questions that actually ask your seller if there's HOAs if there are Mellorues and things of that matter. If there are, get on top of them right away. Make sure your escrow officer and you are talking, and find out if there's anything you have to do or anything your seller has to do to prepare for a buyer so that you're not wasting any time. CC&Rs, I usually put yes because 99% of the time there are CC&Rs. Pool, self-explanatory. Horse property, self-explanatory. And then this on each page, your seller initials, the broker initials, and you initial. Let's scroll down. Bonds. Usually this is an unknown. So if your client knows, then put yes, but ask them if there are any bonds. And if yes, you're going to put yes. The more information you put on these profile sheets, the easier it's going to be when you enter it on the MLS. So that's what this document is for. It's to help input the correct information about the house on the MLS. Existing finance, usually it's conventional, but you can ask them, maybe it's FHA. You do want to ask this question though, because if your client is selling and maybe they have a second on the property and that second may be silent, or maybe it's a private loan, you're going to want to know that ahead of time so that you don't run into any issues at the end of the contract, the end of the transaction when they start calling for demands. You want to make sure that you have enough proceeds there to cover all of the liens, or in this case, the loans that are on the property. Terms, what does that mean? This is the terms that your client is going to agree to accept. Meaning, are they going to be willing to look at a cash offer, a conventional offer, an FHA, a VA? And if they're willing to look at anything, you can hit submit. Now, with investors, you want to be careful and ask them how long it was from the time they purchased the property, because there is something called the 90-day rule, and that 90-day rule can affect your buyer's contract. So if you need more information about that, please contact me and we can talk a little bit about that. But you definitely want to include in the MLS just private notes if it's been purchased less than 90 days, so that any potential agent who has a buyer doesn't write a contract and then you find out later it's an FHA contract and you can't close the deal. So it saves time, headache, and money for the client, because for an investor, every day costs $1. Couple of things, security features, carbon monoxide detector is under here. You want to ask your seller up front if there's a carbon monoxide detector in the property, and if there is not, urge them to put one in, because it's required that there is a carbon monoxide detector before the sale is final. And when the appraiser goes out there, if there is not one there, he's going to need to be recalled, and there may be an additional fee to the buyer, who may then require you to pay that fee, or your seller to pay that fee for not having it installed. In addition to the carbon monoxide detector, you're going to want to ask them if the water heater is braced. And when I say braced, it needs 2 straps on the water heater, because if not, again, if the appraiser is out there and there's only 1 strap on that water heater, then the appraiser needs to be called out and someone has to pay that fee, and that fee is not little. If this is a short, did we hit that part yet? I think I scrolled past it. Let's see, right here. If this home is in default, you mark here. So you ask them, have you missed any payments? Default does not mean that they have already gotten their foreclosure letter. Default means that they have not made a payment, that they have missed a payment. So you're going to hit yes, because 1 payment behind can end up in 2 payments 30 days later, which can affect the property. So everyone needs to be aware of that up front, including yourself. REO, if it's an REO property, REO agents know to click here. HUD property, HUD agents know to click here, etc. We're going to keep going. Oh, there was a short sell button on the very top. Just so you know, if it's a short sell, active short sell, active court approval. We never talk about those, but there's a lot of properties out there, and some of you agents may specialize in probates and so forth, and that would be that one there. So just wanted to show you where that is. If it is a short sell, make sure you mark the box and have your clients, again, initial the bottom of the page so that everyone is on the same page. Remodeled. Has it been remodeled? Yes, no, unknown. If it was, what was the remodel? As in where at, and how many years ago? And then if they do put that here on the TDS, that you're going to want to make sure that they mark it on the TDS as well. And we'll go over the TDS on another day, but just keep a mental note that if they put it here, you definitely want to put the information on the TDS, because you have to what? You have to disclose. So you don't want someone to say, yes, here they remodeled maybe a bathroom. They added a bathroom 3 years ago and they put it here, and they don't mention it on the TDS. You close, and during the close you find out that it wasn't permitted. Uh-oh. Well, no one disclosed it on the disclosures to the buyer, therefore the buyer didn't know, and now the loan doesn't go through. So whatever's on here, keep a good eye on it. Always check your TDS and ask those questions when you get there. None of this needs to be marked in. You're going to go down here, showing instructions, alarm code in lockbox, self-explanatory. Appointment with owner, self-explanatory. Appointment with tenant, first call lockbox. This does not mean call, wait for a response. This means exactly what it says. Call first, lockbox. So if I call you, I'm just telling you that I'm going, and then I'm going to go to the lockbox. So if the person is in front of the house, they're going to call you and they're going to go in that property. So if your client needs a message, if they need to confirm, do not mark this box, because you will have some unhappy sellers. You can do a, call first owner appointment. It's easy as that. You can leave the key in the office. No photos allowed. One of those, remember the listing contract when we said no photos? They can mark that box. Well, here's where you put the prospective buyer or agent cannot take photos of the property. So just make sure that's there, marked. If it's on the on the listing agreement, make sure you mark that as well. Restricted hours would go here, etc. I think you can read that one. Commissions, usually percentage. You're just going to put the percentage amount. No for variable. Listing date, not the day you took the listing contract, but on the first page, remember we had a listing date. That is going to go here. Or no, yeah, here. Then here is going to be the expiration date, and this is the on-market date, which should go back to the listing date. If it is not, you're going to go back to that form and get the waiver so that you can list it on a separate day, or on the market on a different day. So if it's not, these two are not the same, you need that waiver so that when MetroList takes a look at this, when they audit files and so forth, that you are in compliance. Tenant, yes or no? Tenant does not mean that the homeowner lives in the property. So back to this one, appointment with tenant, that means that there's a tenant in the property. If you need an appointment with owner, do appointment with owner. And there's a place for the owner's name and phone number or a gate code. So when you mark this, they believe that there is a tenant in the property, so make sure you put the current rent, or if you don't have the rent, that's fine, but only mark this box if there's a tenant, not because the client doesn't want to show the house. Possession by agreement, type of listing. I hope you guys know this one. And then pictures provided by, and then you're going to need to submit your photos. You can do take by default, but it's only going to be a photo of the front, but you have to come behind them and you have to put at least 5 photos on, or you will be fined. Internet default is yes. You usually want to put it on the internet so people can find you and see you. Property description, take a really good look while you're there so you can get some really good descriptive words. It could be something about the neighborhood as well as the house, just so that you can sell the property really well. Confidential remarks, this is where you would put if it's a short sale, if the commission is going to be less, is going to be diminished because of the short sale, if there are dogs on the property, things of that matter you're going to want to put here. Direction to property, self-explanatory, sign, and then you turn it in. So when you take a listing, what do you need? A listing agreement, the agency disclosure, and a property profile. And I think that is my time for today. So if nobody has any questions, which I don't see any here, then I am going to conclude this evening's meeting and say thank you for joining me this evening. Hope I didn't bore you too much. And hope to see you next week at Damien's training on Monday at 5 o'clock. It will be session 2, the tools of CRM, and he's going to talk to you about CRM. So have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you, Johnny.